And now I'd like to turn the floor over to our Chief Executive Officer, Lukas Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and welcome everybody, and good morning. Really excited to be here today. So, just a little bit about myself. I'll go a little bit of background, and glad to see all of you. I've been my first day was last Monday, so it's a little bit new. But for about the past 9 years, I worked at Allegiant Travel Company based in Las Vegas. It's a leisure-based, ultra low-cost carrier, and what that means. I'll get a little bit more into detail about what the ULCC model is, why Canada is such ripe for this opportunity, and why I think we've got the right management team in place for that. So, at Allegiant, it was one of the fastest growing airlines in the world, one of the most financially successful airlines in the world, and really the business model was about stimulating demand by going in to secondary airports and offering very cheap and great value fares and travel packages to customers that were looking to get out and go to the sun, go out and visit friends and family and such. So, through the decade, the returns were incredibly high. In 2015 and 2016, Allegiant posted the highest operating margins in the world in the entire aviation industry. So it's been a very lucrative model, and certainly part of the model was flying up near some of the secondary airports near Canada, so Bellingham, just across the border here, and Plattsburgh and Niagara Falls and such. And certainly I studied the market. So after the last several years running the commercial team, getting to know the Canadian customer and the value and the hunger that they're looking for, studying the market, decided to say, hey, why don't we actually make a move up here and try it out. So, a little bit about the ULCC model. It's the most, the last, say, 15, 20 years, it's been the most successful, proven part of the aviation industry through that period. In Europe, there's obviously a ton of airlines, and it's up to 30% of the market is now ULCC. In the United States, you've got the fastest growing, most successful carriers are all ultra low cost. Throughout Asia, there's been a tremendous amount of startups. And really, if you look at the most successful airlines that have started up the last 2 decades, almost all of them have been ULCC. It's a little bit of a different model. It's a disciplined model, and you really have to build it from the ground up in the DNA of the company. It focuses a lot of the core principles are flying at a higher rate than some of the other carriers, having the most efficient planes, offering the cheapest possible fares and getting the most stimulation out there to your passengers, and focusing on ancillary revenues, so travel packages, hotels, auto packages like that, checked in baggage fees, and really breaking down and having an a la carte model for the customer, because at the end of the day, the customer is going to make the choice. Whether they want to purchase the trip or not. And typically when a ULCC goes into a market, you start seeing tremendous amounts of stimulation. So a market that might have been a small market can increase 5, 10, 100 times when a ULCC goes in there. So the passenger's hungry for this, and you can notice, obviously I'll talk about it a little bit, Canada's the only G7 country that does not have a grounds-up ULCC. So it's primed for that. And certainly it's been dominated by 2 carriers, Canada has, and it's kind of stifled demand. So obviously Canada, most of the population right here is closer to the U.S. border, but it's got a stable, growing economy, and the passenger stimulation is just not there. If you looked at the index of how many trips a passenger takes out of Canada versus most other developed countries, it's far under-indexed. And that's due to mainly high fares from the 2 incumbent carriers. Really, it's the most dominated air market by oligopoly out there, and really the Canadian passengers have decided, okay, look, if we can't get our fares here, either I'm not going to take the trip or I'm going to drive across the border. And that's not due to, I think a lot gets talked about. There's a structural disadvantage Canada has, or things like that. And that's not the case. It really is, why did we fly near all of these border cities? It's because there was no competitor out here that could offer such a low fare. So to me, the big opportunity is to go out and create something new that was from the ground up and has all those principles out there. So in terms of how big the market space is going to be and what the runway is for a company like Canada Jetlines or anything else, certainly the last month we've gotten a lot of different articles about talking about swoop or flare or how big the space can be, and certainly pushback or articles from the other side saying, oh, Canada's always had 2 carriers, there's certainly not room for another. And to me, again, you look at Europe at 30%, the U.S., it's going to be over 10% with several other startups, and it's the fastest growing market. We put up there a 17 million customer opportunity, and this is, a conservative estimate. This is 12% of the market. This is not 20, 30% of the market. The passengers are going to be there. Tens of millions of passengers will be stimulated, and this doesn't even take into account all the, pushing the passengers back up north of the border. So. There's going to be more than enough room, especially with the growing economy in Canada, and certainly we think we're the right group to do that. And we talked about there's a ULCC, and you kind of look at the fares and yields that Canada's been kind of chained to, and Air Canada obviously one of the highest yield, highest fare airlines out there in the world, and WestJet's historically has just been slightly lower than Air Canada, and that's that's always been good enough for the Canadian market. But for us, you can notice that there's nobody in there in that 50% reduction in fare band for Canada, and that's where we're going to be targeted. That's where we're going to have the maximum stimulation, and everything as a driving focus for the company is going to be how can we get the most affordable price to stimulate the most amount of traffic for the Canadian customer. And you're going to get a question, what about swoop? Where's swoop going to be on here? And if you look at WestJet, it's already a very high fare carrier, and you look at the differences, and I'd like to say swoop is just WestJet planes painted pink. It's the same management team, it's the same headquarters, same pilot group, same labor costs. Everything about it is, just the same exact model, slightly different colors. For us, why do we believe so strongly in this? And it's because you have to come from the ground up. Everything about the company has to be ultra low cost. And so for us, having the right management team, we've recently hired Javier as well. And so when you look at our experiences, Javier came from Welling and Viva Aerobus, both in Spain and Mexico. And we've been a part of some of the most successful financial carriers in the ULCC space out there. And we know this market, we study the market, and we know the potential out there. There's hundreds of routes that we believe in the market that could work and could be simulated. And for us, that's why we decided Canada is right now. So just closing up, what's the vision for the future? When we go out 5, 10 years, what I see in Canada, what I see for Canada Jetlines. I'm excited. I think this is the point in Canadian history that you're going to look back and say, customers are finally freed from all the really high fares and this 2-carrier duopoly that's kind of terrorized the industry for this long. We've got the right management team. We've got the right planes. So recently we announced that we've switched the Airbus A320s. We've got delivery dates for next year. It's incredibly exciting. The A320 is the #1 plane around the world for ultra low cost carriers. It is the choice, and it's the best plane for us. And we're very excited to be working with our partners at Airbus on that. The ULCC market, it's, again, we talked about how historically profitable it's been, but it's also weathered all the macroeconomic conditions better than any other. 10 years ago in the global financial crisis, the carriers that did the best were the fast, nimble, young carriers that were able to, reallocate assets and go up and down with the times. When fuel spiked a couple of years ago, again, ultra low cost carriers were the best to weather that and change their market type. So no matter what the political or macro landscape looks like for the next several years, we're confident that this is the right model and that Canada's ready for it. And with that, I'll open it up to any questions that the group has. All right.
Well, let me ask you a question. What about flare? I never heard of it until the other day when the news there was something about your type of product.
Sure.
So how will you compete with them?
Well, flare is a little different. Again, it's not WestJet, so it's not a a purpose-made competition killer, but it's a company that is using kind of the wrong planes, older planes, expensive planes, and if you really look at their management team, nobody's come from a background of understanding and building the ultra-low-cost model. So, I think they've kind of picked and choose some of the principles, which again, it's a great model, and you can see that they're stimulating some passengers, but I think at its core, when you look at the management team that's going to be building it out, and you look at the structural underlying finance behind what aircraft and route choices and fare structures and service levels. If you really dug in deep and you had some ULCC experts from around the world dig into that model, they'd say Polaris not really a true ULCC. But they are going to be proving out the stimulation factor if you go out and start a new route, which is what we've been saying for a while.
I have another question.
Sure.
What about the financing? Because
Sure. So the keys in the financing process, getting the right planes, the management team, and so we think we're at the point right now. We've been working through the process, and we're certainly further advanced now. And I think this is the right stage, and obviously very confident with myself, Javier coming on, getting the Airbus, the A320s, having a board that's built out with ULCC experience. If you looked at any of the other boards or management teams, executive teams out there, nobody's going to have this pedigree that you can go out and say, we've done this at every other continent around the world, and we've proven this out. That's what gives us confidence. So this is we're in the middle of the process, and we continue to advance it. I got a couple questions. Great. All right. Thank you.